Yeah, thanks, mate. Yeah, no, give it up, yeah. That's fantastic. All right, hi everyone. Great to be here. Special shout out in the audience. I need to take time to do this first. To everyone who didn't know this was happening and just heard the word physicist at 6:30 on a Sunday afternoon. Yes, I am an astrophysicist. I work at Western Sydney University. My slides are up. We're all ready to go. A couple of years ago, a friend who I play cricket with made an interesting comment. It was something you've heard 1,000 times before, maybe the idea that you can't be both a scientist and a Christian. He just said, you've got to choose between God and science, and I chose the science way. Now, you've heard that one before, and I've heard that one before. What was interesting was that this particular bloke, good left arm seamer, but he left school in what I think is your year 11, 2 years before the end, and became an apprentice sign writer, and he was about 20 years old. And I thought, okay, I know where that idea comes from, sort of, over time. How did it get to that guy? Because I know him fairly well. I'm pretty sure he didn't pay any attention in science class. I'm pretty sure he wasn't paying a lot of attention, and yet he's got the idea. I'm just timing my talk, which will be a relief to all of you. He got that idea. A friend of mine who's a chemist, not a pharmacist, but trained as a chemist, chemistry, all that sort of stuff. I said to her, Danny, how was your week? And she said, I got told I don't exist this week. Because you can't be a Christian and a scientist, right? So what I want to do is a couple of things. The main thing that I want to do is just, I think there's a way that we could help a bit more from our side. There might be something in the way we're talking about science which actually is reinforcing the other side. I want to have a think about how to talk about science in a way that is an open opportunity, both to science and to belief in God. So that's my approach here today. So, I want to start with an illustration. Start with a story, a parable maybe. Now, if you've been coming here for a while, I'm sure the preachers here have introduced you to the deep and thoughtful and poignant parables of Jesus. I need you to go ahead and lower your expectations. This is a silly story. I know it's a silly story, but here we go. When I first was starting to explain this, I happened to be in the very northeast corner of the United States, in a state called Maine. If you go up or right, it's Canada. That's where it is. And fair play. That's where Maine is. It's sort of the end of America. And the story I have to tell involves a weird conspiracy theory. So maybe it's easier for you to imagine Americans having a weird conspiracy theory. That's up to you. I won't comment. That's all you. I didn't say that. You did that. Here's the idea. Some people in Maine come up with the idea that Maine is in fact the only place in reality, that nowhere else exists. They don't need anywhere except for Maine. That's the conspiracy theory. Now, every conspiracy theory needs a name. This one is called Maine-onlyism. And the people who believe it, they say, look, we don't need the rest of reality. Every time I've been around the whole of Maine, that's all there is. All this talk of other places, it's just silly conspiracy theory. Now, the point of this is not that that's a stupid idea, but it's how they defend this idea. I told you this was a stupid illustration, right? Carrie, just stick with me. The way they defend this idea is as follows. We know that Maine is the only place that exists because the maps of Maine are really, really good. Thank you. The maps of Maine are great. I told you it was dumb. In other words, whenever I've tried to get around, whenever I want to go in Maine, it says there's a road there and there's a road there. It says there's a mountain there, there's a mountain there. It says there's a river there, there's a river there. It says there's 3 lakes called the Unknowns. They're there as well. I've actually seen those. That one's real. The reason we know that Maine is the only place is because I don't need anywhere else. Every time I get a map of Maine, it shows me everywhere I want to go. So here's the bad argument. We have really accurate maps of Maine, therefore nothing exists apart from Maine. Now, unfortunately, this silly conspiracy theory is kind of growing, and so you start putting together your case for how to show that this is incorrect. Now, of course, you just stick someone in a car and drive them over the border, but ignore that for the moment. Suppose that, unfortunately, the loudest voices in the sort of public debate about this try to counter this argument with the following bad reply. They say, Maine-onlyists say we have really accurate maps of Maine, but some of the maps of Maine are wrong. So Maine-onlyism is wrong. Look, these conspiracy theorists, they say we just need the maps of Maine because they're so good. These maps are supposedly perfectly accurate. They'll tell you where to go in Maine. The other day I went to a street and it wasn't even there. And that's why these Maine-onlyists are wrong. Now, I hope you can see, this is the point of this stupid illustration, I hope you can see that that's not the right approach. Here's a better reply. Any map of Maine could be part of a larger map. No map of Maine requires or implies or even hints that the rest of the world doesn't exist. There's a crucial difference between those two strategies. The wrong approach is to say that the maps are wrong. The right approach is to say that the maps are incomplete, no matter how good they are. That's the important point. It's not a question of how accurate the maps are, it's a question of whether there is anything else out there. But suppose that one step further, because they're so obsessed with Maine, the best maps going around are made by the Maine-onlyists. I should have given myself an easier word to say there, but we're stuck here now. The best maps, because they're obsessed with Maine, of course, they make the best maps, and so everyone starts using their maps. And they start encouraging everyone to refer to the really good maps as Maine-onlyist maps of Maine. What makes it a Maine-onlyist map of Maine? Well, it doesn't show anywhere else, because they don't think there is anywhere else. I think you can also see it would be a major strategical mistake in countering the Maine-onlyists to start referring to the good maps of Maine, or even the bad ones, as Maine-onlyists maps of Maine, because there is no such thing. It only shows Maine because it's a map of Maine. Even if there are other places, if you just map Maine, you just map Maine. That's a weird sentence, I know. There is no such thing as a Maine-onlyist map of Maine. Any map of Maine could be part of a larger whole. Right, now I'm going to get to the point. You've done very well. No one left, I think. Good. If you can see what's wrong with Maine-onlyism, you can see that expanding the size of the bit of the world they think is the whole of reality doesn't help. Right? If you drive them across the border and they see whatever the next state is, I don't even know, and they say, all right, fine, now I'm a USA onlyist. That's not political commentary, do it yourself. If they say that, we just have exactly the same conversation, right? No map of the USA is a USA onlyist map of the USA. Right? The crucial thing is not how accurate the maps are, but how complete they are. That's the question. Let's just take that another step. Okay, fine. They take you overseas. Fine, I'm now an Earth onlyist. That's still no good. A good map of the Earth does not in any way imply that the rest of the solar system doesn't exist. And you should not refer to a map of the Earth as an Earth-onlyist map of Earth. There's no such thing. Let's take another step. Solar system onlyism. No good? Excellent. Milky Way onlyism? No. Physical universe onlyism. And now, my stupid illustration actually got to something people actually believe. There are people who think that the universe is all there is. That the universe is the only place. Now, let me be absolutely clear about something. Physical universe onlyism is not as silly as Maine onlyism, right? I can't stick you in my car and drive you outside the universe, right? So on that level, I'm not making fun of it in that way. The real point that I want to make here to drive it home is that that same argument doesn't work here either. So let me take you through it step by step in painful detail. Physical universe onlyism has a better name. It's called naturalism. The idea that only natural stuff exists. Sometimes it's called materialism. Only matter exists, matter and energy, or whatever you think stuff is made out of. Or physicalism. Only the stuff of physics exists. As a physicist, that one's not so bad. Sorry, no, it is. Okay, good, excellent. Now, just rehearsing that same silly argument we had. The bad argument in favor of naturalism is as follows. We have really accurate maps of the physical universe and how it works. That's what science does. That's the whole point of science, to make it a really accurate map of what's out there, what it's doing, and what it can do, and where it is, and all that sort of stuff. Therefore, nothing apart from the physical universe exists. And if you can see how the bad main-onlyist argument is bad, you can see how that argument, hopefully, is also a bad argument. But here's the move that sometimes gets made. People say, well, naturalists say we have really accurate maps of the physical universe, but some scientific theories aren't very accurate. So naturalism is wrong. And that's a bad approach for the same reason. Now, look, some scientific ideas are bad scientific ideas. I've had some of those myself. We're humans. Of course, we haven't worked out the whole universe yet. But remember the hill to die on. Right? Tomorrow, the science might get better. We might work out some stuff we didn't understand. The point is not that it's wrong. The point is that it's incomplete, even if perfect. There is nothing wrong with a map of Maine to say that it's just a map of Maine. It's only trying to be a map of Maine. It's not failing to be something else. It is no criticism of science to say that it's incomplete. It's not trying to be a complete picture of reality. It's trying to be a complete picture of the natural stuff. And we're a long way from that because the universe is really big and complicated. But that's us, right? We're working on it. Just chill out. Jeez. In fact, it's like if that wasn't the case, I wouldn't have a job. So actually, great, fine, wonderful. Science is sometimes inaccurate. Perfect. Feed the kids. The better reply is to say that any scientific theory could describe something that is part of a larger reality. That is the hill to die on. Incomplete, not wrong, might be wrong, but that's not the point. No scientific theory requires or implies or even hints that the rest of reality doesn't exist, no matter how good it is. It doesn't matter how good it is. In particular, I want to really draw out this point. If you can, that went too far. If you can see that there is no such thing as a Maine-onlyist map of Maine, you can hopefully see there is no such thing as a naturalistic scientific theory. There is no such thing as a naturalistic scientific theory. Not that they're wrong or bad or incomplete or a conspiracy theory. They don't exist. You should not ever call a map of Maine a map-onlyist map of Maine. You are giving them a victory they did not earn. To call anything a naturalistic scientific theory is to give naturalism a victory it did not earn. Any scientific theory could be part of a bigger reality. Let me give another illustration of this point. This one's from a philosopher called Ed Feser. Suppose you have a metal detector and there's a screen on it. That screen can say, there is metal here. That's one thing it could tell you. The screen could also say, there's no metal here. That's something the screen of a metal detector could tell you. What it cannot possibly tell you is there is only metal here. You see why? It's a metal detector. If there was something else there, it wouldn't know. Science looks at the physical world and tries to work out how it works. If there was something else, it wouldn't know. And that's not conspiracy. It's not a criticism. It's not a criticism of a metal detector that it didn't find wood. It's not a criticism of the attempt to understand the physical world that in the end it found the physical world. It's not a criticism. There is no such thing. And yet this is the point where I find Christians talking about science as if it's naturalistic, referring to scientific theories as naturalistic or atheistic or secular. There is no such thing as an atheistic scientific theory. So if you get a map of Maine and you get a texter and on the bottom you write, "This is the whole of reality," you can do that if you like, but what you've definitely stopped doing is mapping Maine. You're not mapping Maine anymore if you're writing, "This is the whole of reality" on the bottom of a map of Maine. You're doing something else. You're not filling in the details of how Maine works and how it's laid out. You're doing something else. If you take a theory about how the world works, whether it's right or whether it's wrong, or whatever motivation the person has, if you take that idea, we can test that. We can try our best to see whether you're right. But if you take that theory and grab your texture and write underneath it, "This is the whole of reality," you've stopped doing science. You're doing something else. Now, you're allowed to do other things. That's fine. But let's be clear about that. You are not doing science. You're doing philosophy. Fine, some of my best friends are philosophers. So I enjoy that a bit too much because some of my friends are philosophers. There is no such thing as an atheistic scientific theory. There isn't. They don't exist. If it's telling you how nature is, it's a natural scientific theory. If it's telling you atheism is true, it's not a scientific theory. It's not even trying to be. Let me give it an example of this. Sometimes this discussion comes up around the origin of life. How did life start in the first place on Earth? Now, I don't know what particular perspective you have on that. I'm not sure how you read Genesis. That's another story for someone else to deal with, right? I'm an astrophysicist, so you know. I'm no expert on Genesis. But here's the point. Whatever your perspective on those, I keep hearing Christians referring to naturalistic theories of the origin of life, atheistic theories of the origin of life, secular theories of the origin of life. If I go after this to the supermarket and buy a great big bucket and a whole bunch of stuff from the ingredients aisle, and I bring it back on this stage, and I put it all in the bucket, and I stir it up in just the right way, and a frog jumps out of the bucket, that will still not be a naturalistic origin of life. It'll be a natural origin of life. Turns out that's some stuff, that outcome is the kind of thing that God's universe can do, but it won't be an atheistic origin of life. It won't be a secular origin of life. The theory that however it could happen. Now, look, we don't know. Go ask a biologist and they will tell you. We don't really, even the people who think that that's how it happened, not the frog, the origin of life, they don't know how it happened either. But that's all right. Look, I could be wrong. They could get some really good ideas tomorrow. Whatever you think about that. The point is not to refer to their ideas as naturalistic scientific theories because it's handing them a victory they have not earned. Where do people get the idea that every success of science is a kickback against faith, against God? I think part of it is here. If you care about people knowing Jesus, obviously the whole God thing is pretty important to that. And this is one of the barriers in the way. If you are making people choose between our understanding of the natural world and believing there's a God behind it, you are many times forcing them to make a choice they just don't have to make. You're putting an obstacle there. Put it another way. This idea that we should refer to scientific theories as naturalistic scientific theories is propaganda from the naturalists, from the atheists. That's how they want us to refer to them, so that any time science does anything, or seems to do anything, it counts as a victory for them. Well, if it's just a natural scientific theory, I believe in the laws of nature as much as you and anybody else. Any idea that could be true on naturalism could be true on theism, on Christianity. Any map that a main onlyist can draw could be part of a bigger map. Yeah. Good. Have I shouted about that enough? Good. Right, rock and roll. There's two ways I think we can actually do better to show that actually not only does science not tell us there's nothing beyond its own boundary, but it fits more snugly, it fits more conveniently, I nearly said naturally, that's the wrong word. It fits better, I'm left with better, more goodly, inside of a Christian worldview in two ways. First of all, the fact that there are laws of nature at all, and secondly, the fact that there are scientists to do science in the first place. On the first one, here's an illustration. Hopefully you're familiar with, even if you haven't done, Sudoku puzzles. You have a grid 9 by 9, and in each square and on each column and each row you have to put the numbers 1 to 9, and some of the numbers are already filled in, and then you have to do the rest of them, right? Look, some of us are nerds. Just let us enjoy our stuff. If you open a book of Sudoku puzzles, you are presuming that someone has already worked backwards from the answer to give you a puzzle you can actually solve. That there is a way to actually lay it out where it all fits. If you discovered a 9 by 9 grid with some numbers in it and then later discover that some toddler had just written some numbers at random in there, you wouldn't try to solve it. Because there might not be a solution. Or it might be, there might be many solutions. There's no unique solution. Christianity was the worldview in which science started precisely because, as Johannes Kepler said, scientists wanted to think God's thoughts after him. There is a rational order to discover in the world because there is a rational mind behind it. The reason we try to solve the universe is because we think that there is a solution to it. Now, maybe we won't get it. We've got to work hard on that, but it is there, and it is worth looking for. This is the idea that sustained the scientific enterprise for centuries, until old Johnny-come-lately of, we don't need God anymore, in like the last 30 seconds. This is the idea that sustains science for centuries. That there is a rational order there because there is a rational mind behind it. If you flip that the other way around and imagine that there's a naturalistic universe, imagine just nature is all there is. Something can be natural without conforming to any pattern. It could be entirely made out of natural stuff, but when you try to break it down, try to understand it, try to solve the puzzle, maybe there's just no solution there. Some of you have phone numbers that you can summarize very easily, right? So suppose your number was 02 and then just whatever it is, 9 more twos. That'd be a really easy thing to summarize. That's the kind of pattern that you want if you want to, discover a pattern. Most of our phone numbers, I can't tell you my phone number in that sort of way. I just have to tell you all the digits. The physical universe could have been like the second case. We find it like the first place. There are laws there to discover. There are amazing ways to summarize the data that we get from the universe, scientific laws. Could have been the case that actually there was nothing to summarize. It would be like trying to see a pattern on an old school fuzzy TV screen. So within a worldview in which there is a designer, where there is a mind behind the universe, expecting there to be a rationality behind what we see in nature fits and makes sense and actually was the origin of science. The second one is that Christianity is a sort of place where you would expect the universe to have scientists, or at least have people who can think and have morally meaningful lives. Now, Why is it the case I'm saying that that's not what you would expect if naturalism were true? Well, here we go. The reason is that what we can do is go back to the deepest laws, go down to the deepest laws we know about, and just for some fun, depending on your definition of fun, see what would happen if you just made a random universe from the bottom, from scratch, from the deepest laws we know about of the universe. There's a way of doing this which involves what are called the fundamental constants of nature. This has been my research for the last 10 years, and that should be a massive red flag for you. Are you all? Anyone who's done, this is a little tip, anyone who's done like a master's or a PhD, there's some topic they desperately hope is going to come up in conversation naturally somehow, right? And you're just talking to this person and you're completely unaware where this ticking time bomb is. But if you wander into it, you'll know, like 2 hours later when they finally let you go. Right? So I just got to warn you, like, I know how much time is left. I will let you, lock the doors, I will let you go. So, all right, here we go. You're made out of the smallest bits of the universe building up, right? So, this is for the exam later. If you break the stuff you're made out of into the smallest bits, those bits are called the up quark, the down quark, and the electron. We all on board? So, yep, good. You're all particle physicists, right? Great. Out of those, we start building things up. So imagine you're on sort of a factory floor and there's an assembly line. And in comes in from this way, the start of the line is up quarks, down quarks, electrons. So the universe is a Lego set with 3 types of brick in it. Okay? The next step is the people who get the up quarks and the down quarks can turn those into protons and neutrons. And then they keep going down. If you take protons and neutrons and put them together, you can make the nuclei of atoms. That was just a dance move, don't worry about it. You can make the nuclei of atoms, the thing at the center of an atom. And then you hand it on, and then someone puts the electrons around the outside. You've made a neutral atom out of the nuclei. And if you put those close enough to each other, the electrons don't just stick around their own home atom. They go on a complicated journey around the whole thing, and you get that sort of Mickey Mouse-shaped water molecule there. The electrons go right around that complicated path around the outside. They bond the nuclei together, and so you have a compound, a chemical compound. And that, in 2 sentences, is how chemistry works. It's not that hard. Our universe is really, really, really good at this. That's DNA. Put those 5 types of element together in that particular order, you can literally write a code. You can write the code for a person or any other life form on planet Earth. What they're actually coding, I promise I won't step on your stuff, Mr. Guitarist. What they're actually coding for is the stuff we're all made out of, like this protein, that protein, this sort of stuff. So if you put enough of those together, you can in fact make cells, biological cells. At this point, I'm way out of my... remember, I'm an astrophysicist. I conked out over there somewhere. But I'm told you're made out of cells, and if you put enough of those together, you make people, and then, society and economics and stuff goes all out that way. All the rest of things. Okay, so what happens if we start making random universes for a bit of fun? Well, let's go back to one of those early steps. There's a picture of the atom, electron going around the outside, all looking great and wonderful. No sign of quantum mechanics there, which is good. The most basic thing, remember like this step, I think we were, the people, they get the protons and the neutrons and they stick them together. I think that was here. Right? That step of the assembly line. If you start changing some of the basic properties of these particles, like how heavy they are, for example, you can actually make it the case that protons don't stick to neutrons. So the people at this station of the assembly line, I can't do my job anymore. They won't stick to each other. I take a proton and a neutron that came down the line, and I put them together, and they just fall apart immediately. And that's a bad sign. With another change, you can actually make that, oh man. Look, I can ruin the universe in a bunch of ways if you're interested. Back. Yeah, that one. And, never mind. That one, yeah. I can make the electron actually go in. So actually, you pass a proton along, and then this guy puts the electron around it, but all the the protons eat all the electrons, turn them into neutrons, and we go back a step. That's no good either. The point is, with some very small changes to how the universe works, the assembly line stops about here. We don't get anywhere near the complexity of the universe. Also, if you change the way the universe expands, cosmology is my field. It's very easy to make a universe in which every proton is just surrounded by a couple of light years of empty space. And maybe another proton will come along and bounce off it every now and then, but that might happen every trillion years, and that's the whole story of the universe. So in that case, again, we get stuck here. Even if other things would connect to the proton and do interesting stuff, nothing ever actually does. The assembly line just grinds to a halt and never passes anything on. All right, let me finish this off. This is Psalm 104. He made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows when to go down. You bring darkness, it becomes night, and all the beasts of the forest prowl. The lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God. The sun rises, they steal away. They return and lie down in their dens. Then people go to their work, to their labor until evening. How many are your works, Lord? In wisdom you made them all. The earth is full of your creatures. The lions roar for their prey and seek their food from God. You don't have to go and kick an ecology textbook to believe that. He's not saying that every time a lion gets hungry, God magics up a steak for the lion. God made the whole thing. So you can delight in the whole thing. You can delight in the details. You can delight as far down as it goes or as big as it goes in the universe. If God made the whole thing, then you can delight in lions being fed in their ecosystem and in the sun rising and setting. Had a slight miracle happen a couple of years ago. My sister recommended a sports documentary. Now, she has 4 brothers, all of whom played all the cricket, and so she's a little bit traumatised by how much cricket she had to watch and sit through. It's always on the television. And so her recommending that documentary was kind of amazing. Now, it was equally interesting because it was a sport that none of us were interested in growing up. It was Formula One. It was Drive to Survive on Netflix, if you've seen it. And that got my attention because she doesn't like sport at all, let alone that particular sport. But I watched it and now I'm slightly hooked for the following reason, that it gets you really involved in the people involved. The driver, you want that guy to win and that guy's going to this place. And at that level, I can appreciate the sort of soap opera that is in fact Formula One. As well as that, of course, there are the other type of fans who are always into Formula One, who as well as wanting to know that this driver's going there or whatever's going on, they also love it at the spark plug level. Like they love every little bit of every little piece of every car at that level. And I hope you can see that there's more than one there's more than one way to be a nerd. There's more than one way to appreciate the way that's all put together. Just for a second, imagine you knew how that worked. Down to every last spark plug. If you see that and you can praise God for that, then what I'm telling you here is you can praise God for the atoms it's made out of, because those are just as amazing. Right? And at no point do we have to declare war on the hummingbird scientists. If God made a universe that has that in it, that's amazing. God made a universe capable of making that, that's just as amazing. So, shameless plug for the books, and I'm done. Thank you very much.